They say you never truly know someone until money is involved. But what if the person sleeping beside you every night was calculating exactly how much your death was worth? I am Ava Mitchell. 72 hours ago, I was a happily married woman, 6 months pregnant, planning a nursery. Today, I am hiding in a women's shelter, penniless with a target on my back. My husband's mistress shoved me in front of a room full of witnesses. Wine exploded across my pregnant belly like blood. And my husband? He protected her. Not me. Not our baby. Her. But that was just the beginning. Because what I discovered next made that assault look like a love tap. $4.2 million. That is what I am worth dead. And my husband? He needed me gone before I gave birth. Empty bank accounts. Forged signatures. Deleted evidence. A mistress who has done this before to other women. And a deadline counting down with every kick from my baby. This is the story of how I fought back against a man who tried to erase me, how I went from victim to survivor, and how I made sure the whole world heard the truth. Before we begin, do me one favor. If this story resonates with you, if you have ever felt gaslit or manipulated or made to feel crazy when you knew something was wrong, hit that subscribe button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it, because the more of us who refuse to stay silent, the harder it becomes for abusers to win. Now let me take you back to where it all started, 72 hours before my perfect life shattered. They say you never see betrayal coming. That is a lie. I saw it. I just did not want to believe it. My name is Ava Mitchell, and this is the story of how my husband tried to kill me. But let me back up. 72 hours before everything fell apart, I was standing in my kitchen, making a smoothie and talking to my belly. 6 months pregnant and glowing, or so everyone told me. The morning sun streamed through the windows of our Napa Valley rental, painting everything golden. I pressed my hand against the curve where my baby grew, feeling those tiny flutters that made my heart race every single time. "Daddy is gonna love you, sweetheart," I whispered. "He is just stressed about work right now." That was what I told myself every time Ethan came home late. Every time he barely looked at me. Every time I found receipts that did not make sense. Like the one I discovered that morning, tucked inside his jacket pocket when I went to take it to the dry cleaner. Tiffany and Company, $8,500. My breath caught. An early push present, maybe? Something for the nursery? Hope bloomed warm in my chest. Maybe things were getting better. Maybe he did still care. My phone buzzed. Text from Ethan. "Emergency meeting tonight. Need you to sign insurance papers." Thornhill Vineyard, 7 p.m. Do not be late. I frowned at the screen. Insurance papers could not wait until he got home? But I pushed the thought away. I was good at that. Pushing away the questions that made my stomach hurt. Looking back, I should have questioned why he could not bring papers home. But when you are in love, or when you are desperately clinging to the memory of love, you make excuses. Here is what I learned the hard way. If someone constantly makes you come to them on their schedule, that is not love. That is control. But I did not know that yet. I got dressed carefully that afternoon. A white maternity dress that made me feel pretty despite my swollen ankles and perpetual exhaustion. I wanted Ethan to see me and remember why he married me. I wanted him to look at me the way he used to, back when we were young and stupid and believed forever meant something. Before I left, I met my best friend Rachel for a quick lunch. Rachel Torres had been my college roommate, the kind of friend who told you the truth even when it hurt. She was a divorce attorney now, which meant she had seen every ugly thing people could do to each other. "Girl, you look exhausted," Rachel said the moment I sat down. "Is Ethan still doing that thing where he works late 4 nights a week?" "He is building his company," I said automatically. The rehearsed answer. "Mm-hmm." Rachel sipped her iced tea. "And I am sure his assistant Chelsea is very helpful, with her degrees from the University of Instagram and LinkedIn thirst traps." Despite everything, I laughed. "You are terrible." "I am honest." Rachel leaned forward, her expression shifting to something more serious. "Ava, you know I love you. So I am going to say this once. Get a post-nuptial agreement. Protect yourself and that baby. We do not need that. Every woman I have represented in my office said the same thing 6 months before their husband cleaned out the joint account. She slid a business card across the table. This is a forensic accountant. If you ever first feel like something is off with your money, call her. No judgment. Just keep it. I pocketed the card to make her happy, even though I knew I would never use it. Also, Rachel said, can we talk about how you are naming this baby? Because if you name him Ethan Jr., I am calling CPS on myself for letting it happen. Stop. I was laughing again, and it felt good. Normal. I wish I had stayed there. In that moment, in that safe, normal place where my biggest worry was baby names. Instead, I drove to Thornhill Vineyard. The tasting hall glowed with warm, golden light and the low hum of conversation. Elegant guests swirled wine in crystal glasses. Everything smelled like oak barrels and money. I smoothed down my dress and stepped inside, scanning the room for my husband. I found him near the far wall, with her, Chelsea Bradford, his assistant, 28 years old with sharp cheekbones and a red dress that clung to her like a second skin. She was laughing at something Ethan said, her hand resting on his arm in a way that made my stomach clench. I walked over, my heels clicking against the polished wood floor. Ethan saw me coming. For just a second, his face flashed with something that looked like irritation. Then he smiled, that practiced public smile that did not reach his eyes anymore. You are here, he said. Good. Papers are in the... Chelsea, can you grab them? Of course, Chelsea's voice dripped with fake sweetness as she brushed past me. Her elbow caught my shoulder just hard enough to make me stumble. Oh, sorry. She said it loud enough for nearby guests to hear. You really should be more careful in your condition. I am fine, I said quietly. Chelsea disappeared toward the exit. The minutes stretched. Ethan checked his phone, barely acknowledging me. I stood there like an idiot, waiting. When Chelsea came back, she was not holding any papers. She walked straight up to me, close, too close. Her perfume was suffocating. He does not want you anymore, she whispered. He wants me. And that baby you are carrying? It is the only thing keeping him trapped. The room seemed to tilt. Excuse me? You heard me. Then she shoved me, hard, calculated, with both hands against my shoulders. I stumbled backward. My heels scraped against the floor. My hips slammed into the edge of the marble tasting counter. Wine glasses exploded off the surface, shattering against the floor in a cascade of breaking glass and splashing liquid. Red wine erupted across my white dress, soaking into the fabric, spreading across my stomach like blood. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Conversation stopped. Every face turned toward us. I clung to the counter, my hands shaking, my heart hammering against my ribs. I pressed one hand protectively over my belly. The baby moved. Thank God. The baby moved. Oh my God, Chelsea's voice rang out, loud and performative. Ava, are you okay? You just lost your balance. People were staring, whispering. No one moved to help me. Then Ethan was there, but he did not come to me. He went to Chelsea. Chelsea, step back, he said. Give her some space. Then he turned to me. His eyes were cold. Why are you making a scene? That was the moment I realized my husband was not my husband anymore. He was protecting the woman who had just assaulted his pregnant wife. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. My throat was too tight. My hands trembled against my belly. Chelsea stood there smirking. Ethan looked annoyed, and I stood there covered in wine that looked like blood, while a room full of strangers watched me break. I do not remember getting to the bathroom. My body moved on autopilot while my brain struggled to process what had just happened. The bathroom was blessedly empty. I locked myself in a stall and let the tears come, silent and hot against my cheeks. My hands would not stop shaking. I kept pressing them against my stomach, checking, making sure the baby was still moving. Each flutter was a small mercy. Someone knocked on the stall door. Ma'am, are you okay? I wiped my face and opened the door. A young woman stood there, maybe 23, wearing the vineyard's server uniform. Her name tag read Melissa. I saw what happened, she said quietly. That woman pushed you. That was not an accident. Fresh tears spilled over. It does not matter. No one will believe me. I recorded it. My heart stopped. What? Melissa pulled out her phone and turned the screen toward me. There it was, clear footage. Chelsea walking up to me, her hands slamming into my shoulders. Me falling. Wine exploding everywhere. Ethan rushing to Chelsea, not to me. Can you send this to me? My voice came out, desperate. Already did. Melissa smiled. I airdropped it to every iPhone in that room. Figured the more people who have it, the harder it is to make disappear. Hope flooded through me so fast it made me dizzy. Thank you, oh God, thank you. My mom always told me millennials are useless, Melissa said. Joke is on her. We are very good at recording drama. She squeezed my arm. Also, document everything, timestamps, screenshots. If someone is gaslighting you, evidence is your best friend. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. I left through the back exit, not wanting to face that crowd again. In my car, I pulled up my phone with trembling hands. There it was, the airdrop video file. I pressed play. Watched myself get shoved. Watched the proof. Then I drove home, my mind racing. I had evidence, real, undeniable evidence. Rachel would know what to do with this. We could file charges. We could protect the baby. We could... My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Stop digging. You will not like what you find. My blood went cold. I pulled over, hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. I opened the video file again. File corrupted. Cannot play video. No, 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 no. I checked my email. No video. I checked my messages. Nothing. I tried to access the file from my cloud. Error, error, error. Panic clawed up my throat. I called Melissa's number, the one she had given me. The number you have dialed is not in service. I turned the car around and raced back to Thornhill Vineyard. My tires screeched as I pulled into the parking lot. I ran inside, ignoring the stares from the same guests who had watched me fall. Melissa, I called out. I need to speak to Melissa. A manager approached, his face concerned and condescending. Ma'am, is everything all right? Your server, Melissa. Dark hair, early 20s. She was working tonight. He frowned. We do not have anyone by that name on staff. She was here. She gave me her number. She helped me in the bathroom. Ma'am, I think you might be confused. Perhaps you should go home and rest. He thought I was crazy. They all thought I was crazy. I stumbled back to my car, my breath coming in short gasps. By the time I pulled into our driveway, the tears had dried, but my hands still shook. The house was dark except for the living room. Ethan sat on the couch, his phone in his hand, backlit by the glow of the screen. Looking for something? His voice was calm, too calm. He turned his phone toward me. The video played on his screen, Chelsea shoving me, the glasses shattering. My fall. Interesting footage, Ethan said. But here is the thing, Ava. No one else has it. I made sure of that. How? The word came out as a whisper. Network security consultant. Costs a fortune, but he is good at what he does. Remotely wiped every device in that room. He set his phone down. Also deleted the server's employment records. Paid her quite well to disappear. Everyone has a price. I felt the floor drop out from under me. Why? My voice broke. Why would you do this? Because you were supposed to keep quiet and sign the papers. But you always have to make things difficult. He stood, straightening his jacket. The divorce papers are on the kitchen table. Sign them, Ava. This does not have to get uglier than it already is. I am carrying your child. I know. His face showed nothing. No warmth, no regret. And I will pay child support as required by law. But this marriage is over. He walked past me, close enough that I could smell his cologne. The same cologne I used to love. Now it made me want to vomit. Oh, and Ava? He paused at the door. If you tried to cause problems, you will find that I have considerably more resources than you do. Think carefully about your next move. The door closed behind him. I heard his car start, watched through the window as his taillights disappeared down the street. I sank onto the floor, my back against the wall, and pulled my phone from my purse with shaking hands. I called Rachel. She answered on the second ring. Hey, I was just thinking about you. How did... I need help. My voice cracked. Rachel, I need help right now. I am coming over. Do not move. 20 minutes later, Rachel burst through my door. I was still sitting on the floor. She took one look at me and dropped to her knees, pulling me into a hug. "Tell me everything," she said. So I did. The shove, the video, the disappearing evidence, Ethan's confession, all of it. Rachel's face went from concerned to furious. By the time I finished, she was pacing my living room like a caged tiger. "That is destruction of evidence," she said. "That is witness tampering. This is not just a fair territory anymore, Ava. This is criminal." "But I have no proof." "Then we get proof." Rachel stopped pacing and looked at me with fierce determination. "You are not rolling over on this. Not while I am breathing." She sat down beside me, pulling out her phone. "Here is what we are going to do. First, we hire a private investigator, someone good. Second, you call that forensic accountant I gave you the card for. Check your finances, all of them. Third, we file for emergency custody protection. And fourth, we get a restraining order against Chelsea." "Rachel, no." Her voice was firm. "No more excuses. No more hoping he will change. He destroyed evidence and threatened you. That man is dangerous." I nodded slowly, feeling something shift inside me. Not quite strength yet, but maybe the beginning of it. "Also," Rachel said, pulling up her laptop, "we are changing all your passwords right now. Your Netflix still has him logged in, which means he is watching your recommendations. No man who betrays you deserves to know you are rewatching The Notebook." Despite everything, I laughed. It came out shaky and wet, but it was real. "I hate you," I said. "You love me." She squeezed my hand, "And we are going to get through this." For the first time since the vineyard, I felt like maybe that could be true. The forensic accountant's office was tucked into a plain building in downtown Napa, the kind of place you would walk past without noticing. Patricia Chen was 50-something with steel gray hair and eyes that probably saw right through every lie ever told to her. Rachel and I sat across from her desk while she pulled up document after document on her computer screen. "I need you to prepare yourself," Patricia said, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "What I am about to show you is not going to be pleasant." She turned the monitor toward us. "Your joint savings account, opened 6 years ago, current balance should be approximately $73,000 based on your regular deposits." I nodded. Ethan and I had been saving for years. For the house we wanted to buy, for our future. "Current actual balance," Patricia said, "is $142. The air left my lungs. "Withdrawn over the past 3 weeks," she continued, "in increments just small enough not to trigger automatic fraud alerts. Very calculated." Rachel grabbed my hand as Patricia pulled up more documents. "Your home equity line of credit. Maximum limit $200,000. You and Ethan took this out last year for renovations, correct?" "Yes," I whispered. "It is maxed out. $200,000 withdrawn over the past 6 months. According to these documents, you co-signed for each withdrawal." She looked at me. "Did you sign anything recently?" "No, nothing." Patricia's expression darkened. "Then these are forgeries. Very good ones, but forgeries nonetheless." She pulled up another screen. "Your retirement account. You have been contributing for 8 years. Should have approximately $95,000. "Should have?" My voice was barely audible. "It was cashed out 2 months ago. Early withdrawal penalties paid. All done with documents bearing your signature." I could not breathe, could not think. The room spun. "There is more," Patricia said quietly. "How can there possibly be more?" Rachel demanded. Patricia pulled up an insurance document. "Life insurance policy, $4.2 million. Policyholder Ethan Mitchell. Required by his investment company for all executive-level employees." She highlighted a section. "Beneficiary in case of death, Ava Mitchell." "I do not understand," I said. "If Ethan dies, you get nothing," Rachel said slowly, her lawyer brain working. "The money goes to you. But if you die, while pregnant," Patricia finished, "before the baby is legally a separate person with rights, Ethan as surviving spouse would control your estate." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. "He needs me dead," I said, "before the baby is born." "Well, that is certainly one interpretation of these facts," Patricia said carefully. My phone rang, the bank. With shaking hands, I answered. Mrs. Mitchell, this is fraud prevention calling. We have frozen your credit cards due to suspicious activity. What suspicious activity? Your husband reported them stolen this morning. I hung up without another word. Before I could process that, my phone rang again. This time it was the property management company. Mrs. Mitchell, we need to discuss your eviction notice. What eviction notice? The rent has not been paid in 3 months. We have sent multiple notices to both you and your husband. I hung up, looked at Rachel. We are being evicted. He has not paid rent. My phone rang a third time. The hospital. Mrs. Mitchell, we are calling about your health insurance. It appears your coverage was canceled last week. Your prenatal appointment scheduled for tomorrow will need to be rescheduled once you have active coverage. Canceled? My voice was rising. I am 6 months pregnant. Yes, ma'am. It appears there was a clerical error. Your husband's company shows he removed you from the policy. I ended the call and stared at Rachel and Patricia. No money, no home, no insurance, no evidence from the vineyard, and a husband who needed me dead before I gave birth. I pressed my hands to my belly. The baby kicked, strong and insistent, a reminder that I was not just fighting for myself anymore. I need to leave, I said suddenly. I need to get out of that house. Already on it, Rachel said, her phone pressed to her ear. I am calling the women's shelter. They have space. You can stay there while we build a case. A shelter? The word felt foreign. Shelters were for other people in worse situations. Patricia leaned forward. Ava, look at me. You have no access to money. Your husband has systematically stripped you of resources. He has motive to harm you. A shelter is not admitting defeat. It is choosing to survive. The baby kicked again, harder this time. Okay, I whispered. Okay. Rachel was already gathering my things, making calls, taking control because I could not. As we left Patricia's office, I looked back at the screen still displaying that life insurance policy. $4.2 million. That was what my life was worth to Ethan. Not love, not our vows, not the baby we had created together. Just a number and a deadline. The New Horizons Women's Shelter sat on a quiet street in a converted church building. From the outside, it looked peaceful, ordinary. Inside, it hummed with the quiet energy of women rebuilding their lives. I stood in the doorway with a single suitcase, feeling like I had wandered into someone else's nightmare. First time is always the hardest, a warm voice said. I turned to see a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and silver hair pulled back in a bun. Her name tag read Donna, Director. I am Ava, I managed. I know, sweetheart. Rachel called ahead. Donna gestured me inside. Let me show you to your room. We walked down a hallway lined with children's artwork and motivational posters. Women passed us, some nodding hello, others keeping their eyes down. I saw my own fear reflected in their faces. This is you, Donna said, opening a door to a small room with 2 twin beds, a dresser, and a window overlooking a garden. You will be sharing with Joyce. She has been here about a month. Good woman. Been through hell, but she has got a spine of steel. Donna set my suitcase on the empty bed. I know this feels overwhelming, but you are safe here. That is what matters. I never thought I would end up in a place like this, I said quietly. Honey, the strongest women I know have sat on that bed. Donna's voice was gentle but firm. Leaving is not weakness. Staying would be. After she left, I sat on the bed and stared at the blank walls. How had my life come to this? 6 months ago, I was planning a nursery. Now I was in a shelter, penniless, with a husband who wanted me dead. The door opened and a woman about 40 walked in, her dark hair in a ponytail, wearing workout clothes. You must be Ava, she said, extending her hand. I am Joyce. Fair warning, I snore, and I talk in my sleep. But I am good about sharing the bathroom. Despite everything, I smiled. Nice to meet you. First day is rough, Joyce said, sitting on her bed. But you made the right call coming here. She studied me. Rachel said your husband is trying to kill you for insurance money. You are very direct. Life is too short for bullshit. My ex tried to kill me. Twice. Emphasis on tried. Now I teach self-defense classes here. She grinned. Men are stupid. We can use that to our advantage. Over the next few days, I fell into the shelter's rhythm. Donna helped me document everything. Medical records showing the baby was healthy despite the fall. Financial records showing Ethan's systematic theft. A timeline of his behavior. Messages from Chelsea that I had saved without even realizing their importance. You need three things, Donna told me. Safety, documentation, and a support system. We will help with all three. Joyce became an unexpected friend. She taught me basic self-defense moves modified for pregnancy. Rule 1, she said during our session in the shelter's basement. Scream fire, not help. People respond to fire. They ignore calls for help. Fire! I shouted, feeling ridiculous. Louder, like you are a Karen who did not get her pumpkin spice latte. I laughed so hard I had to sit down. You are insane. Nah, just well-practiced in surviving terrible men. Rachel visited every day, usually bringing food and legal updates. The private investigator she had hired was named Marcus, a former cop with a specialty in financial crimes. He arrived at the shelter on my fourth day there, carrying a manila folder thick with documents. Mrs. Mitchell, he said, sitting across from me in Donna's office. I have been following your husband and his associate Chelsea Bradford for the past 72 hours. He opened the folder and pulled out photographs. Chelsea, visibly pregnant, very pregnant. My world tilted again. 8 months, Marcus said. She is due in about 4 weeks. I pressed my hand to my mouth. Ethan had been building a whole other life, a whole other family. It gets worse, Marcus said. He showed me another document, a marriage license application. Ethan Mitchell and Chelsea Bradford, filed in Nevada 6 weeks ago. He cannot legally marry her while married to me, I said. Correct, which means he was planning to commit bigamy. Or, Marcus hesitated. Or he was counting on me being dead before anyone noticed. I finished. Rachel slammed her hand on the desk. That is it. We are going to the police, right now. This is attempted murder. Marcus pulled out more documents. There is something else you need to know about Chelsea Bradford. He laid out a criminal record. Fraud from 2019. A restraining order from an ex-boyfriend who claimed she had faked a pregnancy to trap him. A lawsuit from a previous employer for theft. She has a pattern, Marcus said. Target wealthy married men, get pregnant, extract money. This is not her first time. I stared at the documents, my hands shaking. What kind of person does this? A desperate one, Donna said quietly from the doorway, or a damaged one. Hurt people hurt people, but that does not excuse what she has done to you. That afternoon, Rachel and I went to the police station. Detective Barnes, a woman in her 40s with tired eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, took my statement. I showed her everything. The financial fraud, the insurance policy, the marriage license. Chelsea's criminal record. Marcus's photographs. This is substantial, Detective Barnes said, making notes. With this evidence, we can bring your husband in for questioning. The fraud alone is enough for charges. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe. We will contact you within 24 hours, Detective Barnes promised. Rachel and I left the station. In the car, I finally let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, justice was possible. We did it, I said. We actually did it. Rachel squeezed my hand. You did it. I just helped. But that night, back at the shelter, my phone rang. Detective Barnes. Mrs. Mitchell, we have a problem. My stomach dropped. Your husband's attorney filed a complaint this afternoon. Against you. What? For what? Multiple charges. Harassment, defamation, and... She paused. Mrs. Mitchell, he is claiming you are mentally unstable. He has provided documentation suggesting you are experiencing postpartum psychosis. I have not given birth yet. That is not even medically possible. I know, but he has doctor's statements, pharmacy records, witnesses who claim you have been behaving erratically. This is insane. I believe you, Detective Barnes said, but my hands are tied until we can disprove his claims. I am sorry. She hung up. I sat in my small shelter room, phone in my shaking hands, while my entire world collapsed again. The news broke the next morning. I woke up to 17 missed calls and a trending hashtag. Hashtag psycho pregnant wife. With trembling fingers, I opened Twitter. The first video I saw was Chelsea, tears streaming down her face, sitting in what looked like a lawyer's office. I just want people to understand, she sobbed. I never meant to come between Ava and Ethan, but she has been sending me death threats. Horrible, violent messages. I am pregnant too, and I am terrified for my baby. The video had 300,000 views. I scrolled down. More videos. Screenshots of text messages I had supposedly sent. Vicious, threatening messages filled with rage and promises of violence. I had never sent any of them, but they had my name, my phone number, timestamps showing I had sent them at 3 in the morning during my supposed manic episodes. This is not real, I whispered. None of this is real. Joyce sat beside me on the bed. They are framing you. Rachel arrived 20 minutes later, her face grim. Do not read the comments. Do not engage. This is what abusers do when they are losing control. They flip the narrative. But I could not stop reading. Crazy pregnant wife harassing the other woman. Gold digger trying to trap her husband. She probably pushed herself and blamed the mistress. Postpartum psychosis is real. She needs help, not sympathy. A local news station picked up the story by noon. The anchor spoke with practiced concern. Ethan Mitchell, a prominent real estate developer in Napa Valley, has filed a restraining order against his estranged wife, claiming she is a danger to herself and others. Mitchell's attorney released a statement saying they are concerned for Mrs. Mitchell's mental health and the safety of her unborn child. They showed a photo of me from the vineyard, wine-stained, walled-eyed, looking every bit the unstable woman they were painting me to be. Chelsea appeared on the evening news, sitting beside Ethan, her hand resting on her pregnant belly. We just want Ava to get the help she needs, Ethan said, his voice heavy with fake concern. This is not about blame. This is about making sure everyone stays safe, including her baby. The reporter nodded sympathetically. And you are both expecting children around the same time? Yes, Chelsea said softly, which is why this is so difficult. I understand what Ava is going through. Pregnancy hormones are intense, but the threats have become frightening. I watched from the shelter's common room, surrounded by other women who knew exactly what was happening. They had seen it before. The abuser playing victim. The system believing the person with money and power. They are good, Joyce muttered. I will give them that. My phone would not stop buzzing. Messages from former friends. Is this true? I always knew something was off about you. You need help, Ava. Rachel's phone rang. She stepped into the hallway. When she came back, her face was ashen. The judge denied our restraining order against Chelsea, she said quietly. Ethan's team convinced them you are the aggressor. I could not speak, could not breathe. There is more. Rachel sat beside me. They have filed for emergency custody. They are asking the court to place the baby with Ethan immediately after birth, citing your mental instability. The room spun. Other women gasped. Donna put her hand on my shoulder. They cannot do that, Joyce said. That is your baby. They can try, Rachel said, and with public opinion turned against her, with manufactured evidence, with Ethan's resources. She could not finish. I stood up, my legs shaking. I walked to my room and closed the door. I sat on the bed in silence, one hand on my belly. The baby kicked, strong and insistent, a reminder that I was not alone, even though I had never felt more isolated. Every alliance I had was being systematically destroyed. My reputation was in ruins. My credibility was shot. Even people who had known me for years were questioning my sanity. Ethan had not just attacked my finances. He had attacked my identity, my reality, the very foundation of who I believe myself to be. This is what gaslighting looks like when it goes public, when you are not just doubting yourself, but the entire world is doubting you too. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the hate. Each comment was a fresh wound. Then I felt the baby kick again, harder this time, like a tiny fist against my ribs. I placed both hands on my belly and whispered, "You are counting on me. I cannot quit." And in that moment, something shifted. I had been playing defense, reacting, hiding, letting Ethan control the narrative. But here is what I learned in that shelter room, surrounded by hate and lies and the wreckage of my old life. Rock bottom is where you find out what you are made of. When everyone doubts you, the only opinion that matters is yours. I stood up. wiped my face, opened my laptop. If Ethan wanted to make this public, then I would make it public too. But I would tell the truth. I sat in front of my laptop for 3 hours, writing and rewriting what I wanted to say. Rachel sat beside me, offering suggestions, but mostly just being there. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "Once you put this out there, you cannot take it back." "I am sure." I positioned my phone camera, took a breath, and hit record. "My name is Ava Mitchell," I said, looking directly into the lens. "You have seen me called a psycho, a gold digger, mentally unstable. Here is what you have not seen." My hands shook, but my voice stayed steady. 3 weeks ago, my husband's mistress pushed me at a vineyard tasting event. I am 6 months pregnant. I fell into a marble counter. Wine and glass went everywhere. My husband, instead of checking if I was okay, if our baby was okay, protected her. I held up my medical records. These are from the emergency room visit that night. Confirmation that I had bruising consistent with being shoved. Confirmation that my baby's heart rate spiked from stress. I pulled out the financial documents Patricia had given me. This is my joint savings account, emptied by my husband over 3 weeks. This is our home equity line, maxed out without my knowledge. These signatures? Forged. I have handwriting analysis to prove it. I showed the life insurance policy. $4.2 million. That is what I am worth to my husband dead. If I die before giving birth, he controls my estate. He gets the money, and his pregnant mistress gets to play house with my child. I could feel tears coming, but I pushed through. I am not crazy. I am not sending death threats. Those messages are fabricated. What I am is a woman fighting for her life and her baby's life against a man who has spent months systematically destroying me. I leaned closer to the camera. If you are watching this and you feel like I did, doubting yourself, making excuses for someone who hurts you, please hear me. You are not crazy. You are being abused, and you deserve better. I posted the video to every social media platform I had. Then I waited. For the first hour, nothing happened. 10 views, 20, 50. Then it started climbing. 100, 500, 1,000. Rachel's phone started ringing. "It is being shared," she said, her eyes wide. By morning, the video had 2 million views. The comments section exploded. "I believe you. This happened to me too. Stay strong. We see you." But more importantly, other things started happening. Women came forward, dozens of them, saying they had been in relationships with Ethan's business partners, saying they had been treated the same way, saying they had been too afraid to speak up. And then 3 women came forward about Chelsea. The first was a man named David Torres from Los Angeles. "Chelsea Bradford convinced me she was pregnant with my child. I left my wife, gave her $50,000. Then she disappeared. The pregnancy was fake." The second was a woman named Jennifer Yates. "Chelsea worked for my husband's company. She seduced him, got pregnant, demanded money to go away quietly. We paid her $75,000. Later found out she had done the same thing to 2 other executives. The third was the most damning, another pregnant woman. Chelsea told me she was starting a support group for single mothers. She got me to invest in her business idea, $30,000. Then she vanished. The story went viral, not just on social media, but real news outlets picked it up. Investigative journalists started digging into Ethan's business. They found discrepancies, shady deals, missing money. The narrative shifted, fast. Suddenly, I was not the crazy wife. I was the victim of a calculated scheme. Detective Barnes called. "Mrs. Mitchell, in light of new information, we are reopening our investigation. Can you come down to the station?" Rachel and I went immediately. This time, there were cameras outside, reporters shouting questions. "Ava, is it true your husband tried to kill you? Ava, how are you protecting your baby?" I kept my head down and let Rachel guide me inside. In the interview room, Detective Barnes laid out everything they had found. Ethan Mitchell has been running a real estate scam for 2 years. He has been taking investor money and funneling it into offshore accounts. Chelsea Bradford appears to be his partner. They have done this before in Arizona. Different names, same scheme. So this was never about love. I said quietly. It was about money, all along. We believe so. And you, with your insurance policy and your trust in him, made the perfect target. What happens now? Rachel asked. We have enough to arrest both of them. We are just waiting for the warrant. I sat back in the chair, feeling lighter and heavier all at once. Lighter because the truth was finally coming out. Heavier because the man I had loved, the man I had married, had never existed. He had been a con from the beginning. That evening, I was back at the shelter when my phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Ava? Ethan's voice. Cold. Controlled. Stop, he said. Stop talking to the press. Take down the video. We can still fix this. Fix this? I almost laughed. You tried to kill me. Do not be dramatic. I never touched you. No, you got Chelsea to do it. You manipulated everything so your hands stayed clean. Silence, then. You are ruining everything. I will give you money. Real money. Half of everything. Just stop. No. Ava, you tried to kill me for insurance money. You stole everything I had. You gaslit me into thinking I was crazy. And now you want me to just stop because it is inconvenient for you. That baby you are carrying, Ethan said, his voice dropping, is the only thing keeping me from... He stopped. From what? I pressed. Say it, Ethan. Say what you were going to do. You are recording this, or not you? He realized too late. Yes, I said. I learned from the best. I heard him breathing, heavy, angry. You are going to regret this, he said. The only thing I regret is wasting 7 years on you. I hung up. My hands shook, but my heart felt steady. Rachel burst into the room. The police are at Ethan's office right now. They are making the arrest. I turned on the news. Live footage showed Ethan being led out in handcuffs. His face was pale, angry, afraid. Chelsea was arrested at her apartment, crying and screaming about how this was all a mistake. I watched it all from my small shelter room, surrounded by women who understood what it took to get here. Donna sat beside me. How are you feeling? I do not know, I admitted. I thought I would feel triumphant, but I just feel tired. That is because you have been in survival mode for months, she said. Real healing comes later. The baby kicked. I smiled despite everything. Yeah, later. 3 months later, I sat in a federal courtroom, 8 months pregnant and terrified. The trial had been expedited because of my due date. The prosecution did not want me giving birth before I could testify. Ethan sat at the defense table in a suit that probably cost more than I had spent on groceries in a year. He would not look at me. Chelsea sat beside her own attorney, crying quietly into a tissue. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Linda Vasquez, approached the jury box. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, this is a case about calculated cruelty, about two people who saw a pregnant woman as nothing more than a financial opportunity, about a scheme so cold-blooded that it required one person to die for it to succeed. She turned to gesture at me. Ava Mitchell trusted her husband. She loved him. She believed in their future together. And Ethan Mitchell used that trust to systematically destroy her life, not because she had done anything wrong, but because she was worth more dead than alive. Over the next 2 weeks, the prosecution built their case piece by piece. Patricia testified about the financial fraud, how Ethan had forged Ava's signature dozens of times, how he had drained accounts and maxed out credit lines with surgical precision. Marcus testified about his investigation, the timeline he had built, the offshore accounts, the pattern of behavior. 3 women testified about Chelsea's previous cons, the fake pregnancies, the extorted money, the manufactured crises, and then it was my turn. I walked to the witness stand, my hand on my enormous belly. I swore to tell the truth. Then I sat. Linda approached me gently. Mrs. Mitchell, can you tell the jury about the night at Thornhill Vineyard? I took a breath. I thought I was going to sign insurance papers. My husband told me it was urgent. When I got there, his assistant Chelsea confronted me. She told me he did not want me anymore. Then she pushed me. Hard. I fell into a marble counter. I am 6 months pregnant. I thought I was going to lose my baby. And what did your husband do? He protected her. Not me. Not our child, her. How did that make you feel? I looked at the jury, 12 people, mostly women in their 50s and 60s, people who understood what it meant to trust someone who did not deserve it. It made me realize I had been living in a carefully constructed lie, I said. My husband had not just stopped loving me, he had never loved me. I was always just a means to an end. Linda showed the jury the insurance policy, the forged signatures, the emptied accounts. Then she asked the question that I had been dreading. Mrs. Mitchell, do you believe your husband intended to kill you? I looked at Ethan. Finally, he met my eyes. Cold. Empty. Yes, I said. I believe if I had died at that vineyard, it would have been considered a tragic accident. Pregnant woman falls, hits her head. Terrible, but these things happen. And Ethan would have collected $4.2 million. The defense attorney, a man named Richard Hall, tried to break me on cross-examination. Is it not true, Mrs. Mitchell, that you have a history of anxiety? I have anxiety now because my husband tried to kill me. Is it not true that you made several large purchases in the months before your separation? No, those purchases were made with forged signatures. Is it not possible that you simply forgot signing those documents? Pregnancy can affect memory. I did not forget. I never signed them. He tried everything, suggesting I was confused, implying I was vindictive, hinting that I had mental health issues, but I did not break. When I stepped down from the stand, my hands were shaking, but my voice had been steady. The defense called Ethan to testify. Watching him lie under oath was surreal. I love my wife, he said, his voice breaking perfectly. I never wanted to hurt her. This has all been a terrible misunderstanding. Then why did you drain her bank accounts? Linda asked on cross. I was protecting our assets during a difficult time. By forging her signature? I had her permission. Where is the written permission? It was verbal. How convenient. The trial lasted 3 weeks. By the end, the jury looked exhausted. So did I. In closing arguments, Linda stood before the jury one last time. Ava Mitchell is not on trial here, but she has been tried. By her husband, by public opinion, by a system that almost failed her. She has endured humiliation, betrayal, and attempted murder. And through it all, she has fought. Not with violence, not with lies, but with truth. She paused. Ethan Mitchell is a con artist. Chelsea Bradford is his accomplice. And together they nearly got away with the perfect crime. Do not let them. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, I could barely breathe. On the count of fraud, how do you find? Guilty. On the count of attempted murder? Guilty. On the count of conspiracy? Guilty. 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 Every count. Chelsea was convicted too. Fraud, assault, conspiracy. Ethan's face went white. Chelsea sobbed. The judge set sentencing for 2 weeks later. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Rachel held my hand as we pushed through the crowd. Ava, how do you feel? I stopped, turned to the cameras. I feel like I can finally breathe, I said. And I hope every woman watching this knows that you do not have to stay silent. You do not have to accept abuse. There is always a way out. It might be hard. It might be terrifying, but you are worth fighting for. Then I let Rachel guide me to the car. That night, back at the shelter, I felt the baby move. Strong kicks. Reminders that soon, very soon, I would meet this little person I had fought so hard to protect. Donna brought me tea. You did good today. We are not done yet, I said. Sentencing is still coming. I know, but you already won the part that matters. You got your truth heard. 2 weeks later, I was back in the courtroom, this time for sentencing. The judge, an older woman named Margaret Reeves, looked at Ethan with barely concealed disgust. Mr. Mitchell, you have committed crimes that strike at the heart of trust and family. You targeted your pregnant wife not out of passion or mistake, but with cold calculation. The law must send a message that such behavior will not be tolerated. She sentenced him to 25 years in federal prison. Chelsea received 15 years. It was over. Really, truly over. 1 year later, I stood on the porch of a small apartment in Sacramento, holding my son Noah in my arms. He was 6 months old, with dark hair and eyes that saw everything. Look at the birds, baby. I whispered, pointing at the sparrows on the fence. He gurgled, reaching tiny hands toward them. My apartment was not much. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen barely big enough for one person, and a bathroom with questionable water pressure. But it was mine. My name on the lease. My furniture. My rules. I had used part of the restitution from Ethan's seized assets to get back on my feet. The rest was in a trust for Noah, protected by lawyers Rachel had recommended. I was working again too. Freelance marketing from home, slowly rebuilding the career I had abandoned when I got married. It was not glamorous, but it was honest work and it paid the bills. My laptop sat open on the kitchen table, showing my current project, a support group website for survivors of financial abuse. Over the past year, I had connected with hundreds of women who had experienced what I had: the isolation, the gaslighting, the systematic destruction of their financial independence. We shared resources, legal advice, encouragement. 1,200 women in our group now, I told Noah, even though he could not possibly understand. 1,200 women who are not alone anymore. The doorbell rang. Rachel stood on the other side, carrying coffee and pastries. "How is my favorite nephew?" she asked, taking Noah from my arms and covering his face with kisses. "He is your only nephew, which makes him the favorite by default." She settled onto the couch with him. "How is the book coming?" I grimaced. "Slowly. The publisher wants it by next month." "What are you calling it?" "Shattered Trust: One Woman's Fight Against Financial Abuse." "I love it." Rachel bounced Noah gently. "Please tell me you gave Ethan a terrible fake name." "I called him Brad." Rachel laughed so hard she snorted. "Perfect. All terrible men should be named Brad." We sat together in comfortable silence, drinking coffee while Noah played with Rachel's necklace. "Do you ever think about going back?" Rachel asked quietly. "Not to him, just to the life you had before, the big house, the country club. All of it." I thought about it, really thought about it. "No," I said finally. "That life was built on lies. This life right here is real. It is hard sometimes, but it is mine." My phone buzzed. An email from one of the women in the support group. "Ava, I followed your advice and opened my own bank account. My husband does not know. I am saving money every week. For the first time in 10 years, I feel like I have options. Thank you." I showed the message to Rachel. "You are changing lives," she said. "I am just sharing what I learned." That is how change happens, one story at a time. Noah started fussing. I took him back and walked to the window, swaying gently. Outside, the world moved on. People going to work, kids riding bikes, normal, beautiful, mundane life. "You know what I have been thinking about?" I said. "That night at the vineyard, when Chelsea pushed me and Ethan protected her. In that moment, I thought my life was ending. But it was actually beginning," Rachel said softly. "Yeah." I kissed Noah's head. It was the worst thing and the best thing, because it forced me to wake up, to fight, to become someone stronger than I ever knew I could be. Rachel stood to leave, hugging both of us. "Same time next week?" "Absolutely." After she left, I sat at my laptop with Noah sleeping in his bouncer beside me. I pulled up the final chapter of my book. "If I could tell my past self anything," I typed, "it would be this: document everything. Trust your gut. Build your own money, your own identity, your own strength. Do not wait for someone else to save you. Save yourself." I paused, watching Noah sleep, his tiny chest rising and falling. "Leaving is terrifying," I continued writing, "but staying can be fatal. And you, whoever you are reading this, you are stronger than you know. Your story does not end with someone else's cruelty. It begins where you decide to fight back." I hit save, closed the laptop. Noah stirred, blinking up at me with those huge dark eyes. "Your mama is a fighter," I told him. "And I am going to make sure you grow up knowing that love should never hurt. That family means protection, not manipulation. That you are worth more than any price tag anyone tries to put on you." He smiled, that gummy, beautiful baby smile that made everything worth it. Outside, the sun was setting over Sacramento. Golden light spilled through my window, painting everything warm. It was not the life I had planned. It was better because it was real, it was earned, it was free among, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I was not afraid. 2 years after the trial, I received an invitation I never expected. The New Horizons Women's Shelter was hosting their annual fundraiser, and they wanted me to speak. I do not know, I told Donna over the phone. Noah was running around my living room, nearly 3 years old now, and full of unstoppable energy. You do not have to, Donna said, but your story has power. The women here, they know your name. They have read your book. You give them hope. I thought about the scared woman I had been, walking through those shelter doors with nothing but a suitcase and a prayer. Okay, I said, I will do it. The night of the fundraiser, I stood backstage in a simple blue dress, my hands shaking like they always did before I had to speak publicly. Rachel stood beside me, holding Noah's hand. You have got this, she whispered. The event coordinator signaled. It was time. I walked onto the stage to applause. The room was filled with donors, survivors, advocates, people who believed in second chances. Thank you for being here, I began. 3 years ago, I walked into the shelter with nothing. My husband had stolen everything I owned. His mistress had assaulted me while I was 6 months pregnant. The entire world thought I was crazy. I paused, looking out at the faces watching me. But the women here, they did not judge me. They gave me a safe place to sleep. They helped me document my abuse. They taught me that leaving was not weakness. It was survival. I told my story, not all of it, just the parts that mattered. The fear, the financial abuse, the gaslighting, the moment I decided to fight back. I want to be clear about something, I said. I did not save myself alone. I had help. I had Rachel, my attorney who worked for free because she believed in me. I had Donna and Joyce and all the women in this shelter who had survived their own nightmares and were willing to walk beside me through mine. I looked directly at the survivors in the audience. I could pick them out. They sat differently. They watched differently. They understood. If you are in the middle of your fight right now, hear me. You are not alone. You are not crazy. And you are not trapped even when it feels like every door is locked. There is always a way out. It might not be easy. It might not be fast. But it exists. I shared the 3 pieces of advice I wished I had known earlier. First, document everything. Screenshots, emails, bank statements. Abusers rely on your silence and your lack of evidence. Do not give them that power. Second, build your own financial independence, even if it is just $20 a month in a secret account, even if it is a credit card in your name only. Economic abuse traps you. Money gives you options. Third, trust your gut. If something feels wrong, it probably is. You are not being paranoid. You are not being dramatic. You are noticing a pattern, and patterns tell the truth. The applause was loud when I finished, but the moment that mattered came afterward. A young woman approached me, probably early 20s, her hands twisting together nervously. Mrs. Mitchell, she said quietly, I am living what you lived. My boyfriend controls all the money. He tells me I am too stupid to handle finances. He checks my phone. He tells me no one else would want me. I took her hands. How old are you? 23. Do you have family you can go to? She nodded. My sister, but I am embarrassed. I do not want her to know how bad it got. Your sister would rather you be alive and embarrassed than dead and dignified. Call her tonight. Tell her everything. And if you need help leaving, the advocates here will walk you through every step. She hugged me, crying, Thank you. Thank you for making me feel less alone. After the event, Rachel and I took Noah out for ice cream. He was covered in chocolate within minutes. That woman you talked to, Rachel said, she is going to leave him. I could see it in her eyes. I hope so. You gave her permission to save herself. That matters more than you know. We sat on a bench outside the ice cream shop, watching Noah chase pigeons. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had not left? Rachel asked. Every day, I admitted. I think about the version of me that stayed, that believed Ethan's lies, that signed those divorce papers and gave up everything. What do you think happened to that version of you? I watched Noah laugh as a pigeon flew away from his grabbing hands. I think she would be dead, I said quietly. Or so broken she might as well be. Ethan needed me gone one way or another. If I had stayed, he would have found a way. Rachel squeezed my hand. But you did not stay. No, I fought and I won. We sat in comfortable silence until Noah ran back to us, demanding more ice cream. No more sugar for you, buddy, I said, wiping his face with a napkin. You are already vibrating. He giggled and climbed into my lap. That night, after I put Noah to bed, I sat at my desk and opened my email. Messages from women asking for advice, sharing their stories, thanking me for speaking up. Each one reminded me why I kept doing this. Why I kept reliving the worst moments of my life in speeches and interviews and book chapters. Because silence protects abusers, truth protects victims. And every woman who found the courage to leave because she heard my story was a victory, not just for her, for all of us. I replied to each email, offering resources, encouragement, reminders that they were not alone. Then I opened a new document and started writing what would become my second book. This one focused specifically on financial abuse, how to recognize it, how to document it, or how to escape it. The work was hard. Reliving trauma never felt good, but it felt necessary, and necessary was enough. 5 years after I walked into that courtroom and watched Ethan get sentenced, I sat in a television studio, waiting to be interviewed on a national morning show. Noah was in kindergarten now, a smart, funny, confident kid who knew nothing about the darkness that had surrounded his entry into the world. And that was exactly how I wanted it. The makeup artist touched up my face. 2 minutes, she said. Rachel sat in the green room, giving me a thumbs up through the window. The interviewer, a woman named Sandra Hayes, settled into her chair across from me. We are here with Ava Mitchell, she said to the camera, author of 2 best-selling books on surviving abuse and founder of the Financial Abuse Survivors Network. Ava, thank you for being here. Thank you for having me. Your story is extraordinary. Your husband and his mistress tried to kill you for insurance money. You were 6 months pregnant. You had no resources, no evidence, no support system. Yet here you are. How? I smiled. I had more than I realized. I had one friend who refused to give up on me. I had women in a shelter who had survived their own nightmares and were willing to share their strength. And I had a baby depending on me to fight. What would you say to women who are in similar situations right now? I looked directly into the camera, imagining all the women watching who needed to hear this. I would say this: if you are reading the signs, you already know the truth. Trust yourself. You are not crazy. You are not overreacting. And you are not trapped, even though it feels that way. I leaned forward slightly. Economic abuse is real. It is designed to make you dependent, to steal your options, to convince you that you cannot survive without your abuser. But you can. People have survived with less than you have right now. And there are organizations, shelters, advocates who will help you build an escape plan. Sandra nodded. Your organization has helped thousands of women. What is next for you? We are launching a financial literacy program specifically for abuse survivors, teaching basic banking, credit repair, budgeting. Skills that many of us never learned because someone else controlled the money. And personally, I thought about Noah, about our small but happy life, about the peace I had fought so hard to earn. Personally, I am focused on raising my son to understand that love means respect, that partnership means equality, that the strongest thing you can do is choose kindness, especially when cruelty would be easier. After the interview, I met Rachel for lunch. She was representing 3 new clients, all referred from my support network. You are keeping me busy, she said with a smile. Good, that means women are getting help. We ordered salads and caught up on life. Rachel was dating someone new, a teacher who made her laugh. I was still single and perfectly fine with that. Do you think you will ever date again? Rachel asked. Maybe, someday, when I meet someone who makes me feel safe instead of anxious, who adds to my life instead of controlling it. That is a healthy answer. Therapy helped. I grinned. Who knew? My phone buzzed. A message from my literary agent. The publisher wants a 3rd book. They are thinking something about rebuilding trust after betrayal. Are you going to do it? I thought about it. Yeah, I think I am. There is still so much to say. That evening, I picked Noah up from school. He ran to me with a painting he had made, blue and green swirls with a yellow sun. It is our family, he said proudly. I looked at the painting. Two stick figures, one tall, one small. It is beautiful, buddy. The teacher said to paint our family, so I painted us. My throat tightened. Just us? Yeah, you and me. We are a family. I hugged him tight, blinking back tears. Yes, we are, sweetheart. Yes, we are. At home, I hung his painting on the refrigerator. Then I made dinner, gave him a bath, read him 3 stories, and tucked him into bed. Mom, he said sleepily, I love you. I love you too, Noah, more than anything in the whole world. After he fell asleep, I poured myself a cup of tea and stepped onto my small balcony. The city lights twinkled below. Somewhere out there, Ethan was in a federal prison. Chelsea, too. Their scheme had collapsed. Their lies had been exposed. Justice had been served. But my story was not about them anymore. It was about the woman who had walked into a shelter with nothing and walked out with everything that mattered. Strength, truth, dignity, freedom. It was about 1,200 women in an online support group sharing resources and hope. It was about a little boy who knew he was loved unconditionally. It was about choosing to fight when every instinct said to give up. I thought about all the women who would read my books, hear my speeches, join my organization. Women who were scared and alone and convinced they had no options. I wanted them to know what I knew now. You are stronger than your worst moment. You are worth more than what anyone else says you are worth. And your story does not end with someone else's cruelty. It begins where you decide to write your own ending. I finished my tea and went back inside. Tomorrow I would wake up and do it all again. Answer emails, work on the new book, pick up Noah from school, build this life one small choice at a time. It was not perfect, but it was mine, and that made it perfect enough.